I was 10 years old. My older brother showed me something on his phone. It was animated, like a comic. I didn't fully understand what I was looking at, but something in my brain said, more. That was the beginning of 6 years I am still unpacking. I'm 17 now, and I want to tell you exactly what those 6 years did. Not to scare you, not to shame you, but because I spent years searching for someone who would just tell me the truth about what was happening in my head. Nobody did. So I'm going to be that person for you. Here's what nobody tells you about the first time. It doesn't feel like the beginning of a problem. It feels like a discovery, like you found something the adults in your life deliberately hid from you, something exciting, something yours. Your brain registers it as the most stimulating thing it has ever encountered. And that's not an exaggeration, that's biology. Your brain has a reward system built around dopamine, the chemical that signals, this matters, do it again. Food triggers it, connection triggers it, achievement triggers it. Pornography triggers it at a level none of those things can match. Not because it's real, because it's designed to be more stimulating than anything real could be. Unlimited novelty, unlimited escalation, no rejection, no consequences, a super stimulus, something so far beyond what the brain evolved to process that it doesn't know how to respond except with more. I was 10, my brain was still being built, and I had just handed it something it was completely unprepared for. By the time I was 12, 13, 14, I was different, and I didn't know why. I became very alone, not the kind of alone where you want company, the kind where you stop knowing how to be around people. I couldn't hold eye contact with girls, not because I didn't want to talk to them, because my brain had been consuming a version of them for years that had nothing to do with who they actually were. And somewhere in that gap, I became awkward, weird, uncomfortable in my own body around other people. I didn't have many friends. I was on my phone at 12:30 a.m., 1 a.m. in the dark, alone, not because I wanted to be, because that's what the routine had become. The brain was running its program, and I was just the person it was happening to. My mind was always thinking about it, in class, in conversations, in moments that should have been about something else entirely. It occupied space I needed for other things, and underneath all of it was something I didn't have a name for at the time. Depression. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that makes you feel like you're slightly outside your own life. Present, but not there. Going through the motions of being a person while something essential was running in the background, consuming everything. I remember thinking that nobody liked me. Not my friends. Not the people around me. Not even my parents. I one day thought about ending my life. I want to say that clearly, because I think a lot of people watching this have had that thought and never heard anyone else admit it. You are not broken for having it. I had it. I know what it feels like to be in that place. And I also know, now, what was happening in my brain when I was there. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for emotional regulation, long-term thinking, and the sense that your life has direction, had been suppressed by years of dopamine flooding. The part of your brain that tells you things can get better was running on empty. That wasn't a character flaw. That was a brain running on a depleted system, trying to function as if it wasn't. When I was 16, I started to understand the mechanism. I found people online talking about what pornography actually does to the brain, the dopamine receptors, the desensitization, the way the brain physically rewires itself around a stimulus it was never designed to process at that frequency and intensity. I understood it. Understanding it did not stop me from watching, and this is the part I need you to hear, because this is where most people give up on themselves. Knowing the mechanism does not automatically override the mechanism. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational, knowing part of your brain, understands exactly what is happening. It has read the research. It agrees with you. It wants to stop. But the dopamine system does not negotiate with the prefrontal cortex. It runs underneath it. It operates on a different timescale. And after years of conditioning, it is significantly stronger than any single decision to change. This is not weakness. This is neuroscience. I tried to quit. I went 3 months without watching. Day 3. I want to describe day 3 because nobody ever described it to me, and it changed everything when I experienced it for myself. Day 3 felt like waking up. Not dramatically, just clearer. Like a background noise I had stopped noticing had suddenly gone quiet. I started going to the gym. I talked to people I didn't usually talk to. I felt something that I can only describe as being in control of my own life. A small confidence, a sense that I was the one deciding what happened next. That feeling was real. It was biological. The dopamine system, no longer being flooded artificially, was beginning to recalibrate. Natural rewards, movement, connection, achievement were starting to register again. And then I relapsed. I am not going to tell you why, because the reason doesn't matter. The reason is always something. A moment of boredom, a moment of stress, a half-naked image on a screen that the brain filed as a trigger before the prefrontal cortex even finished its sentence. You see it. You try not to think about it. You are fighting your own brain, and at some point, you give in. I didn't tell myself anything after. I believed in God at that time. And every time I relapsed, I had this feeling, not quite guilt, more like dread, that something bad was going to happen the next day, a kind of fear. But even that fear wasn't enough to stop the next time, because fear doesn't rewire a dopamine system. Only sustained, consistent, deliberate change rewires a dopamine system. The thing that changed was not a decision. It was an understanding. I started to think about my future self, not in an abstract motivational way, concretely, specifically. If I don't quit now, I will grow up with this. Every goal I have, everything I want to build, every relationship I want to have, every version of myself I can imagine becoming, all of it will be competing with a system in my brain that is optimized for one thing. And that system was winning. I also understood something about my brain specifically that I hadn't fully grasped before. My brain was 16, still being built. The prefrontal cortex, the region that handles long-term planning, impulse control, emotional regulation, identity, does not finish developing until you are 25. I had been exposing a developing brain to a superstimulus since I was 10. 6 years of critical brain development. I was desensitizing the very architecture my future was going to run on. That landed differently than any willpower argument ever had. This wasn't about discipline. This wasn't about being strong enough. This was about the fact that I was actively damaging the most important organ I would ever own during the years it needed the most protection. Your brain is not fully built yet. Everything you put into it right now has consequences you will feel for decades. That's not a threat. That's biology. I'm not going to tell you I have it all figured out. I'm 17. I am still in the middle of this, but I can tell you what is true for me right now. The constant background noise is gone. The thought that used to occupy space in every room I was in, gone. Not completely, not forever, but quiet enough that I can hear myself think. I feel in control of my own life in a way I did not feel for most of my childhood. Not because I am more disciplined than I was, because the system running underneath my decisions is no longer working against me. The gym is not a chore. It is where I go because I want to go. The conversations I was afraid to have are happening. The goals I had written down and then put away because I couldn't focus on them, I can see them again. None of that happened because I got stronger. It happened because I stopped fighting my brain and started working with it. I want to end with the thing I wish someone had told me when I was 10 years old. Not about pornography specifically, about your brain. Protect it. Not because someone told you to. Not out of fear. Not out of shame. Because it is yours. Because it is the only one you get. Because every goal you have, every relationship you want, every version of yourself you can imagine, all of it runs on the brain you are building right now. I didn't know that at 10. I know it at 17, and if this video reaches one person who needed to hear it, then the 6 years were worth something. My name is Kyle, this is Unhooked, and we're just getting started.